But what the FBI has stated in this intelligence document, and it says that radical-traditional Catholics, which is not a term that I've heard in the counterterrorism space before, but it is being used, are very likely to be recruited by what are called racially motivated violent extremists, which you would know as white supremacists.
But joining us right now via telephone is Kyle Seraphin, former FBI agent turned whistleblower and committed Catholic. Praise be to God. Good morning to you, Kyle.
Good morning, Joe. How are you doing?
Praise be to God. I am alive, and that counts. How are you?
I'm good. It's early and it's chilly out here in Arizona.
So you and I have had the opportunity previously to talk about you turning to an FBI whistleblower because you were an FBI agent for a number of years. And that's a big story. I mean, the things going on in the FBI have really been shocking to a lot of Americans. And now there's a story out. The FBI could be targeting traditional Catholics. What's going on?
So the FBI has, a lot of people think that maybe they'll hit the brakes. They did 2020. We saw the arrest of pro-life activists. We saw, targeting of parents at school board meetings who are interested in stopping things like CRT and radical gender ideology being pushed on their children. So it would make sense that with that sort of notoriety, and the FBI doesn't really go looking for that sort of thing, that they would maybe pump the brakes and do some self-reflection and decide if that really was part of the mission set of federal law enforcement in this country. And what we're seeing is actually, I think, quite the opposite, which is to say that the Bureau has doubled down on some of the stupidity and maybe the priorities of this regime, and maybe just leftist regimes in general. I got a whistleblower document which will be published today at uncovereddc.com. People can go check out. I wrote an article about it to do some analysis because it's not necessarily obvious, although the words are pretty clear. But what the FBI has stated in this intelligence document, and by the way, this doesn't represent the entire FBI. It represents one field office publishing a intelligence product or what they call domain awareness. And it says that radical traditional Catholics, which is not a term that I've heard in the counterterrorism space before, but it is being used, are very likely to be recruited by what are called racially motivated violent extremists, which you would know as white supremacists. And that there's a significant overlap in ideologies there because of stances on abortion, which should actually be the same stance that all Catholics hold, and moreover, pretty much all Christians. And then also stances on things like LGBTQ agendas being pushed in our society, which is not something that we believe is bringing people to God. So it's pretty incredible that it was put down in writing, and the sourcing for this document is even weirder because it's all out of policy for the FBI. The FBI doesn't allow them to use things like the Southern Poverty Law Center to reference intelligence products, but it is in black and white, and it was given to me by somebody who saw a real problem.
That's really insane to think that traditional Catholics apparently are the ones who hold pro-life views. I mean, like to your point a second ago, that's got nothing to do with just being trad Catholic. All Catholics should be pro-life. If only our president could be pro-life, that'd be amazing too. So what is this? What's the ramifications here? Does this mean that traditional Catholics have to now worry? Are they being surveilled? Is there a possibility that they'll be surveilled? Or how does this information get used at the FBI?
So when intelligence products are written, they're essentially like a term paper that can be used as a reference for later. And they're not the basis of an investigation, but they can help prop up and predicate investigations. The problem with the types of investigations we're talking about, in this case specifically counterterrorism, is that you're going to see people be able to reference this document. Other intelligence intelligence analysts can write pieces that are going to reference it and use it as a kind of a jumping off point. Imagine kind of like a predicate for a crystal, and the crystal can have different cells that grow along it. This is kind of the first cell, and it actually mentions it in the piece, first of its kind. There's a reason why it's first of its kind, because it's generally considered out of bounds to go into First Amendment protected activities. But the real concern that was given, that the whistleblower gave it to me for, is that this should be something that all Christians really hold as far as views. And so it's maybe what they consider a fringe group that they can go and target for now, and they can write about. But all Christians are really going to be in the crosshairs with the same types of beliefs. evangelicals, Lutherans, Episcopals, take your pick, Baptists. So the idea of a radical Baptist or a radical Lutheran is now on the table if you're going to start talking about radical Catholics and a faith that has 70 million adherents in this country.
Wow. This is really, really insane. I was looking at your Twitter feed, and you have a screenshot, a picture of a portion of this information there. And I would encourage everybody to check out Kyle Seraphin on Twitter, at Kyle Seraphin. By the way, fantastic last name. It's always good to have the angels on your side, right? Praise be to God. And I was looking at this, and it lists not just it says SSPX, FSSP, and others on here. SSPV's on there. I mean, it's what's mind-boggling is like they don't even like. Does anybody at the FBI even know what these organizations really are? What they're really all about? The history of them or anything? It seems so arbitrary to me.
I think that is probably the crux of the issue. The FBI has been recruiting their intelligence analyst pool from people who have advanced degrees in college. A lot of them have master's degrees. Some of them even are have or are working on PhDs while working in this job. And our attorneys come out of very left-leaning law schools. So you've got a lot of academia, a lot of time in academia, which means a lot of time in indoctrination in a lot of ways. So no, I don't think that they're necessarily religious people. There are plenty of religious people. In fact, one of the most common things that I found when I met FBI actual agents, not the intelligence analysts, but a lot of agents are Catholic, whether they're traditional or otherwise, and so they are adherents to to the Catholic faith. And so that's one of those things where I don't think this thing has been, this obviously wasn't something that the director signed off on. It didn't go all the way up to the top. What it did was it was written in a field office. It was circulated, probably amongst the squad to be able to figure out whether the grammar was correct and whether the phrasing was correct and whether the outlook on the quote unquote threat picture was accurate. It was signed off on by that supervisor, and then it was reviewed and approved for dissemination by the chief attorney in the Richmond field office. So with all those things in mind, it went through a number of hands, but it's by no means representative of the entire FBI. It's just representative of a single symptom of a broader disease, which is that there's a leftist bent that is sort of taken root inside what should be a very nonpartisan law enforcement agency. And a lot of that's because the FBI is acting as an intelligence agency instead.
Wow. So how do Catholics in the FBI, how do they rationalize this? How would a Catholic in the FBI right now who came across this information, how would they feel? How would they deal with this? I mean, that must be getting harder and harder every single day to want to serve our country in what used to have a great reputation as an agency, but lately seems to just keep spiraling down the wrong direction here. So how do Catholics deal with this?
Well, they got, kind of a couple different options. One, they can blow the whistle on things when they see this, and they need to. It is, and that's why, the individual who gave it to me came forward, although not a Catholic, a practicing Christian and a devout person. So I think that is, I think that's part one, that people need to call out wrongdoing when they see it. And they can't tolerate it amongst themselves. I think today's going to be an interesting day in the FBI as this goes public, because 10 o'clock on the East Coast, people are going to be able to start seeing this actual, the source document and then my write-up on it. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have to answer some questions to themselves about what it is that the organization that they have started, spent their life working for. A lot of people have a significant number of years of service there, whether that actually does uphold the oath that they swore many years ago. In my case, I've done it several times, both as a member of the military and in law enforcement. The oath is to the Constitution, which is to our constitutional principles, and notwithstanding the Bill of Rights and that First Amendment, which says that this is not a ground that the federal government can infringe upon and should not under any circumstances.
Does it break your heart to see the American populace lose its faith and trust in the government? I mean, the Fed is a catchphrase used to be a derogatory term now on social media. That guy's a Fed, Fed, this is a thing. It's that this country seems so different than even when I was a kid. You and I are probably close in age, and when I was a kid, you would have looked up to the Fed. You would have looked up to serving in the military. These would have been badges of honor. Now it seems like much more shame. How do you see that severe shift in optics in our country?
Well, I mean, what it feels like is someone who is, not just that I respected, but I went out there and actively sought it. I enlisted when I was 27 years old, despite having a college degree, and I was working in a pretty professional career path. But I wanted to serve. I wanted to do something that I thought would defend the nation and to add my capabilities, my physical capabilities to the fight that keeps us free. And you go and do something like that, and then when you find yourself in a spot like I am, the word is betrayal. That's what it feels like. It feels like that the ideals that you signed up for, that I signed up for, were betrayed. And it doesn't hurt when somebody that you don't have a high expectation of lets you down. That's actually sort of pretty standard. It's when something that you trusted and something you believed in lets you down. That's what betrayal is. That's what the knife in the back feels like. So it's a terrible situation. It's terrible for our young people to be looking down the barrel of a country that doesn't hold the same ideals. Like you say, we are roughly the same age, and there was a time when all Americans knew that we were on Team America. We just sort of disagreed with how we got to a better version of it. And I think now that there are two very distinct visions of what this country is, and they're not in agreement, not in any way.
Now, you've since leaving your career behind at the FBI, because you were a whistleblower, and thank you for doing that. It took great courage to walk away from a career that must have been a terribly difficult decision to make. But now you're still sounding the alarm out there in the media. You've got a podcast going. Where can we find more information about what you're doing and what you're talking about?
So people can find me on Truth Social, and they can find me on Twitter. I have that same handle, @Kyle Seraphin, but I use the same thing on everything else. So if people go to rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin, they can see the video versions of our podcast. I do a long-form weekly interview every week with a member out of the intelligence community, either a former FBI agent or somebody that was related to that field, or a victim of the DOJ or FBI. We've been working on getting those stories out from a perspective of both, a former agent and then someone who has seen the other end of this, the federal enforcement apparatus. And they can also find it on anywhere they find podcasts. So if you use Apple or Spotify or Amazon Music, it's all kind of hosted through a system called Podbean. So it's the Kyle Seraphin, literally the word the Kyle Seraphin show.podbean.com.
I'm going to put links to that in the live social feeds. I want everybody to check that out and get connected right away. Where is the article going to be, Kyle?
It is going to be at uncoverdc.com.
Text me that link. I want to make sure that everybody gets that for sure. This is an incredible story. We're living in incredible times, but these are the times God made us for. So let's step up and be amazing Catholics living in a state of grace. Kyle Seraphin, God bless you. God love you. Thanks for sounding the alarm on this. I really appreciate it.
A pleasure. Thanks so much, Joe.